Good morning, everybody. Happy Friday. Welcome on into your FreightWaves Now Community Spotlight. I'm Keely Nix, and it's Friday, so we've got Mary O'Connell here talking about the cold chain space. Mary, thanks for joining us. It's officially Friday. We're headed into the weekend. Huzzah.
Huzzah! Actually, in most, we are actually after Labor Day weekend, so I believe you can actually say huzzah more if the ads I've gotten for the Renaissance Fair are any indication. I know that's like a thing. I just go for the deep fried chocolate covered strawberries.
Do you think that the Renaissance people had cold chain logistics storage to deal with?
I mean, technically, yes. Well, I don't remember the exact dates of the Renaissance, so apologies to history people out there who love dates. But like back in yesteryear, we actually have an episode of Running on Ice about this. They had like cold chain kind of where they would just put fish on like a bunch of ice and like insulate it with like charcoal and wool and then like put it on a boat. So technically, yes, maybe. I don't remember like those dates in conjunction with the Renaissance time period, because that's not the kind of history nerd that I am.
We'll just have to cast our brains back into the days of yore. And maybe if you go to the Renaissance Fair, hey, ask them, what's your cold chain logistics solutions like? And maybe can we help here at Running on Ice? Anyways, let's move into our topic for today. Something that the folks in the Renaissance definitely didn't have, that's battery storage to help with their cold chain logistics problems. You are back with Beam Global once again. Talk to us a little bit about what they are now doing to shake up some of the power solutions when it comes to cold chain storage.
Yeah, so I feel like lately we've just kind of been covering all of the weird, I don't want to say weird, but like the unsung heroes of the supply chain, right? So when you think of cold chain, you think of like ultra cold warehouses, other things like electric pallet jacks that can go in and out and are cleaner for potentially food items that are in there. And you think of all of like the fun, cool, like, oh, this is 300,000 square foot warehouse. But we've kind of dived into kind of what powers some of the stuff within that. So, if you're working in a cold chain warehouse, obviously conditions are a little bit different than a traditional warehouse. You have freezers, things are often held below zero or in a frozen state. So that means that you kind of have to approach things a little differently. So this week we took some time to break down some of the stuff that goes into battery life and different things that, power the cold chain, and whether that's batteries on your pallet jack or batteries of a compressor or you name it. There's a lot of energy storage that happens there. And, a cold chain, arguably more than most other modes of transportation, they need that reliability. They need that security. They need to know that that power is going to be there when they need it. So that way that product doesn't go bad, it doesn't spoil, and you're not left with, a truck full of melted ice cream.
Yeah, or fish that has been left out of its ice blocks and wool wrapping, I don't know. Well, you do make a really good point, though, is that we are continuing to highlight these pieces of the cold chain specifically that don't necessarily get a lot of hype, right? Like they're not these big time topics. They're not necessarily revolutionary in what they're doing, but they provide consistency and reliability, as you mentioned. That's the big word. So we start to see a lot of these folks, these shippers or the carriers specifically, turn to some of these solutions when they're looking at knocking down some of those emissions, right? We're starting to get into that space in 2025 where Scope 2 and Scope 3 emissions are going to have to be completely reported. Being able to track what you are producing and minimize that by switching to storage solutions like battery power is something that can help everybody in the long term. Talk to me a little bit about Beam and what they're looking at producing now. It's the Beam AllCell is their newest product. Explain a little bit about what that is and where they're trying to make the biggest impact.
Yeah, so their new battery that they have coming out, it's the Beam AllCell, and it really has taken a lot more. It's basically taken a lot more energy and a lot more power and kind of combined it down to a really much smaller, much more efficient unit. So it's going to power your machines more efficiently. It's going to take less time to charge. You're not going to have to charge it as frequently. Obviously, you should still probably charge at the end of the day because that way you have a full day's worth of forklift ability. But one of the cool things about it is, Obviously, Beam really takes their customer feedback into account. So they sit there and they knew that they needed a solution that would perform under some extreme temperatures. So it's kind of a technology that they're implementing throughout a lot of their new products, but they found a way that actually allows them. So, for example, ultra cold warehouses, things are kind of different there. You have specialized protective equipment for employees, and your forklifts will run just fine. But at the end of the shift, how are you going to charge them? Where are you going to charge them? Is there a not ultra cold, like, 50 below 0 Celsius or whatever it is? Um, it's ultra cold. So can you charge your forklift in there? Because there are certain conditions that if a battery charges when it's too cold, it could result in some pretty significant consequences of the negative variety. So it's something that, they do have to develop and design batteries and things around these conditions, because it's not like, oh, we're going to have only like one or two batteries that are going to charge in these ultra cold warehouses. No, it's a thing, and they have to make sure that they are providing safe, reliable batteries that ultimately won't put a warehouse up in flames. And that's something that they've really been able to do through all of their patents, through their technology, is they put safety first, and they won't put anything out for their customers until they have aggressively stress tested it themselves. And we get into some of those things that they were able to do to really pressure test their products before they went to market.
One of the conversations that we have when it comes to battery storage in the broader supply chain space, or battery usage just in general, is kind of life cycle, and then what happens to those batteries after we see them run to the end of that life cycle have to be either recycled or replaced. And in the cold storage space, when you do need that reliability and you are running your products pretty much consistently in order to keep your products cold, you're going to see the wear and tear on those battery products happen a lot faster and see the life cycles of them be condensed down. Is there any talk about what a new product like the Beam AllCell can do as far as life cycle wise, or what their plans are for maybe recycling, reuse, or retirement of the batteries once they wear out?
Yeah, so that's we didn't cover that one that much, but that is something that Beam does ultimately care about, is that sustainability, that growth. So they do have some programs in place for batteries, and kind of once it reaches its end of its life, whether it's something that they can just fix and then sell it as a refurbished one, or a different model or a different program for it. That is something that they do focus on. They've actually even brought in some of their battery production back here in the States and brought it back in-house, so that way they have more control over the manufacturing process, and ultimately can contribute and actually make sure that they're not increasing any of their waste, and that they're running the most efficient and sourcing the best materials that they can. So that way you don't have to worry about sourcing materials and driving in, like importing them and having them go on ships and all this other stuff. They've really kind of cleaned up that area, which is ultimately kind of the goal that we want to see out of more shippers and manufacturers.
So as we continue to see some progress coming out of Beam, anything on what the horizon is, or what's on the horizon for them coming up next and some of their other future plans?
Well, I would like to say that they will completely, make it so that you don't have to worry about charging anything anymore. But they do have some big plans. We get into that a little bit in the episode that comes out today at 2 p.m. Central, by the way, if you're into that. But we do have, but they actually kind of come up with we dove into some of the solutions that they came up with that that aren't, that they technically are revolutionary, but they're not like, you don't have to get a whole new battery. It's kind of a simple solution. Whereas if you have something that's super, super cold, you can get you can program into your dashboard or whatever to give it a little spark that will heat the battery. So that way, if it's been in a warehouse for, 12 hours, basically frozen, you can heat up the battery before you charge it, so that way you don't have ultra cold charging and ultimately create a fire or create a problem. If you create that spark, it actually will charge faster, consume less energy, and it will be safer for the battery. So some of that technology that they've come across, that sometimes warmer batteries charge faster, they've been able to implement some of that into their customers, obviously without having to buy all new batteries and retrofit a bunch of stuff.
There we go. Well, if you want to learn more about that, make sure that you tune into Running on Ice this afternoon right here on FreightWaves TV. And head on over to freightwaves.com and subscribe to that Running on Ice newsletter as well. Mary, thanks for joining us this morning. Have a great weekend, and we will catch up with you next Friday.
Alrighty, guys, you as well.